Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I rise this evening to continue the dialogue about home ownership and the possibility of accessing superannuation funds. As I listened to the discussion this afternoon around the table, it really occurred to me how disappointing it is that, with the depth of interest that exists on all areas of this chamber, why we can't have a dialogue based on policy and not cheap politics. I asked the question, Acting Deputy President, what's the ultimate objective of superannuation? And of course it is to provide sufficient resources for a comfortable retirement. Now, at the moment, the only way of doing that, of course, is the accumulated funds that are in savings, and then, as we see with interest and with compounding, we end up achieving that goal more or less. A second option may be the possibility of accessing some of those superannuation funds to provide the deposit for a person's first home. And the third, indeed, may be, and I intend speaking tomorrow evening on this in adjournment, and that is a possible access for some people, mid-20s to mid-30s people, who missed out on the opportunity of a university education early, now in the workplace, realising the value of a higher education. In fact, the wisdom is that a degree gives you about $1 million more over your career than without having one. So imagine how much better you'd be in retirement to have that $1 million as an alternative or as an addition to superannuation. So I ask this question, returning now to the prospect of the use of some superannuation funds to assist with a housing deposit. Acting Deputy President, I ask the question, whose money is it? Whose money is it? It's the person into whose super fund these monies are being paid. Why is it that they have no decision or no choice? All of us would be aware that in many instances the only difference between rent and mortgage payments, which are about the same on a monthly basis, is the fact that the person renting doesn't have the deposit to actually get into the home ownership market. So if it's possible to actually use those funds for that purpose. The third question I ask is, why does it have to be apart from the superannuation system? Why could the super fund not be able to provide that deposit, hold the mortgage over time, and there's absolutely no loss? So where is the loss? Instead of the super fund using accumulated funds to invest in infrastructure projects in Portugal or Poland or somewhere, they would actually be spending those funds to invest in young Australians getting into their own homes. Now, whether that's an Australian super fund, whether it's a self-managed super fund, whether it's an Australian super fund, why do they have to actually exit the superannuation market? And of course, an added point would be that you'd be taking pressure off the rental market as people moved from rental into home ownership. I think it was Senator Ludlam this afternoon that said about a third of adult Australians are renting. It's an interesting statistic. 15 years ago, 45% of Australians owned their own home outright. That's now deteriorated down to about 33%. But of course, where are the benefits, Acting Deputy President? We all know them. We all know the value of a family being in their own home. Some of the issues that Senator Wright spoke about this evening, discord in the family, uncertainty amongst children, we all know the best place for a child or for children is for them to be in their own home, in which each night they will come back to their own bedroom. What sort of reliefs will we be able to achieve of so much uncertainty, so much family discord that exists today if we're able to move towards that circumstance? In 2012, I funded myself a visit to Singapore to talk to the Housing Development Board. Let me give you some stats from Singapore. 90%, I'll repeat that, 90% of adult Singaporeans own or are purchasing their own dwelling, and they have used their Central Provident Fund for this purpose. 85% in the HDB system, 15% in private housing. The funds can be used to purchase or to pay stamp duty or whatever. 90% of adult Singaporeans are in their own home. And of course we all know possession turns a sow's ear into a silk purse. But of course, over time, in the event that that dwelling is sold, then the funds will revert into the super fund. Or older people in Singapore, if their retirement component of their super fund is not adequate, they have the opportunity then to downsize and put the balance back into their superannuation fund. So 90%, Senator Conroy, of Singaporeans are in their own dwelling. And I ask the question, where is the loss to the superannuation industry if indeed the super fund funds that particular purchase? Senator Conroy asked me about compounding. Thank you, Senator Conroy. I have been in real estate home ownership for 40 years, and I will debate with you any time you like that the compounding—
Senator Back, address your comments to the chair. And Senator Conroy, please do not disrupt the agenda.
Acting Deputy President, the value of my real estate investments over 40 years, by virtue of compounding and by virtue of capital gain, vastly outweigh the minimal benefit that there has been to me in superannuation. I am keen to discuss this with Senator Conroy when the opportunity presents, Acting Deputy President. But of course we know the circumstance, because once somebody is in their own dwelling, we know they have the opportunity to upgrade over time. Capital gain benefit goes to the homeowner, to the person buying. In our own case, my wife and I, 1974, purchased a very humble little timber cottage, timber roof, at least tin roof, in the town of Northam. But of course, as time progressed, as it gained in capital value, we were able to sell it, we were able to upgrade. So surely the opportunity must exist, and I am very keen to engage with Senator Conroy at a later time. I am very, very keen to have that discussion, because I think there are enormous benefits. There's enormous benefits to the community, there's enormous benefits to individuals, there's enormous benefits to families, and at no time is there a loss to the Australian net value of superannuation, Acting Deputy President, because the additional value over time of that real estate asset actually stays within the retirement fund. So what then can be achieved? First of all, if there are concerns about overheating a market, it could be that the opportunity is limited to new builds to stimulate housing construction. It could certainly be that if there's a concern about overheating markets, that in certain markets it could be limited to a percentage of the median house price. I return to the concept of rural and regional. Senator Conroy, Acting Deputy President, probably never goes into regional or rural Australia, but I can say to you there are towns that are dying. There are towns where the cost of a house to a young family is very, very attractive. The opportunity for them to move into that circumstance, to gain home ownership, is absolutely incredible. And so we have many, many circumstances, in my view, in which this sort of issue can well be discussed. Is it of value to the Australian community for us to have a higher proportion of home ownership? Does Senator Conroy believe that it isn't a benefit, Acting Deputy President? I'll conclude, if I may, with the story of my own family. My father's mother died when he was a young kid in the goldfields, and at the same time his father took the family down to Fremantle, where my grandfather got a job on the wharf. An equivalent family, the Migro family, at that time, their husband and father died in a mine accident in Boulder. Nana Migro, as I remember, very, very small woman, widowed in about 1919, 1920, no husband, no social security, 5 children, 6 when my father was added into it. But what did happen was that a bank backed her, Acting Deputy President. They actually loaned her those funds, and my father's earliest memories are in fact living in the safety and the security of the Migro household, in which she was able to provide a roof over their heads. That little house in John Street in North Fremantle still exists. Time went on. My father, working on the wharf during the Depression, studying bookkeeping, got a job as a banker, and regrettably for me, died at the age of 60 years in the bank. What was interesting was when he died, the number of letters my mother received from people who said to her, "Your husband supported us into home ownership. They supported us for a roof over our heads, and that was what kept our families together. I grew up in a household which absolutely valued home ownership, Acting Deputy President, and I, for one, want to see Australia's funds assisting in using it.
Thank you, Senator Back.